Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 189. This is, the theme of this episode is going to be wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle, because I have dipped my toes into a lot of things over the last, since the last episode, and I am not super deep into a lot of them, but I do have some impressions. Oh boy, don't you guys like impressions? Hey, speaking of we had no questions from last time. But if you'd like to ask a question, you can leave it down in the comments below, and I will definitely get to it next time. In the meantime, though, we didn't. I was about to just say exactly what I just said again. This is why I need like a minute to warm up. And we're about to hit a minute on the podcast. There we go. Now I'm all up and ready. Now I'm all raring to go. My week has not been super eventful, mostly because I was in this really weird state of always being kind of tired. I was like falling asleep at 10 p.m. and then waking up at 1 a.m. and then falling asleep again at like 10 a.m. It was really odd. So it's been a bit of a blur. My life is kind of a blur sometimes. But occasionally I have these landmarks that help moments in time stand out, such as going to see K-pop Demon Hunters live in the theater. Can you believe it? The smash hit Netflix movie. Well, it was a Sony movie. This is actually one of the funniest things about K-pop Demon Hunters to me. K-poop Dookie Munchers. Is that it was produced for, I don't know exactly how much money, and then Sony Pictures, Sony animated the movie. It was under the Sony Pictures Animation studio. And then they had so little faith in the film that they sold it to Netflix for like a quarter of what it cost. And it's made Netflix, I'm pretty sure, like 10 times what they got it for. Like, absolute crazy fumble. The first thing I thought of when I heard about that was Blizzard passing up the opportunity to make Dota 2 because they were too good for that shit. And then they like 5 years later, they went, oh no, what, MOBAs? Blizzard's such a funny company. Anyway, was K-pop Demon Hunters better the second time around? Well, I mean, it was about the same. My thoughts on the movie haven't really changed. Really, what you're going to something like this for... Did I even set it up? So, because it's been so successful on the streaming service... Netflix has licensed it out to have a small theatrical run of like 2 days. I can't believe they didn't go longer because the turnout for these were crazy. Like, we were trying to get tickets like 2 weeks in advance. They sold out almost immediately at the theater closest to us. You're going to these things mostly for the communal experience because it's not just a screening, it's also a sing-along. So there is an audience, there's an aspect of audience participation. The community is built into the thing. So I'm not expecting like the Alamo Draft House experience where like everyone's quiet and like they ask you to leave if you make too much noise, which is like a whisper. Actually, I believe there was an Alamo Drafthouse screening of K-pop Demon Hunters, and they you know, it was a sing along, so they lifted the usual rules on quietness they have at that chain. So Kat, okay, this just shows how out of the loop that I am, but I also continue to be completely vindicated in what I said the first time I talked about this movie, if you recall. My thoughts on K-pop Demon Hunters were that it was a pretty well put together movie that was, I think, generally good. It just wasn't made for me. I am just really not in the target audience. I don't really like K-pop music. A lot of just aspects of the story are not particularly particularly interesting to me. I thought the animation was really good. I thought a lot of the choreography and direction was good. The music seemed well made. I have no taste for K-pop, so I couldn't tell you if it was good or bad. People love it apparently. But that's the thing. I said, it's really not for me. But if you're like an 11-year-old girl who loves K-pop, this movie probably rips. This is probably the sickest shit you've seen in your life. And I said that like we saw that movie the day of or the day after it dropped. And that was my initial reaction. That was my initial response. And I think I talked about it on the podcast when it only had a little bit of buzz. And guess who's, call me a regular old Nostradamus. Because I called that. I could not have expected the level to which this movie has soared to popularity. That was a weird phrasing of that. This is like Black Panther for women. And it's been a little like we went over to a friend's house and she lives with her family and she has this, I think 8 or 9-year-old little sister. And the sister is like, do you guys do K-pop Demon Hunters? And we said, yeah. And she goes, I've seen it 87 times. And we went, oh. And then she put it on for us and we watched the first 30 minutes again. So with all that being said, I have been like forcibly, also because Kat loves the movie. So Kat comes over to my place and she's like, oh, I'm going to cosplay to the theater. I'm going to be Zoe from the movie. And I was like, oh, okay, sure, cool. And she tells me that her cosplay, I thought it was going to be one of the, I don't know, main outfits or something from the film. But no, she says, oh, my outfit is, I'm going to be wearing like from the scene after the first concert that they do when they go to relax. And she's just wearing like a bathrobe. And I was like, and like towels. And I was like, really? My first question was, you're like wearing clothes under there, right? And she goes, oh yeah. And I said, okay. And I'm just picturing like walking downtown and like into a theater. And I was like, do you think that anyone's gonna get it? Like, you think people are gonna recognize what you're doing? And she's like, oh yeah, no, they will. And I in the back of my mind, I thought, nothing's gonna, no, I don't think anyone's gonna get what this is. So first of all, on the way there, we passed by this 40-something-year-old guy who saw Kat, and with these super wide eyes, he let out like a, don't expect to see that every day. It's just this very like, gee golly, like reaction of, he was just totally surprised that this girl was walking in like a full bathrobe and with the little like Princess Leia hair bun things on that she'd fashioned some towels into. So like we get to the theater and we're going up the escalator to where the actual theater houses are. And as we're ascending, we hear from down below where like the lobby is, this girl go, Zoe! Ah! And like we turn around and there's this little group of like middle school girls and they're like, oh my god, it's Zoe! And I was like, huh? I get she looked at me, she goes, you thought no one was gonna get it. And I said, huh? I guess I was proved, I guess you were right. Color me wrong? Color me corrected. Is that what you say? I stand corrected. I don't know, like the crowd, it was kind of nice to go to a theater experience where it was okay that people were a little, I say rowdy, but it was mostly just that like people were singing during the songs. It was a fairly packed theater. It wasn't the biggest theater house, but it was, most of the seats were full. A lot of girls there, like children. There was a girl in front of us who, throughout the film, I realized was quoting the movie line for line. So it's at that level right now. Actually, so we were sitting near the front, but not in those like cursed super front row seats, where it's like too close to the screen. We were sitting at the seats like in the front, but also on the corner and right next to where you walk into the theater, right that little hallway tunnel on the side. So we're sitting there just before the movie starts, and these like what I can only describe as a certified swagapino walks into the theater with, I think, like his little sisters that he was taking to it, and they like all run to their seats, and he goes, "There's a lot of K-pop fans in here." And I said, I looked at Kat, and he was right next to us. I looked at Kat and I said, "That's so true." And as he's walking up the stairs, he hears me and he looks over, and we have like a boyfriend moment. And he goes, "Yo, type shit. Dap me up, brother." And I did my best white guy dap attempt with him. It was kind of clunky. And then he just like walks back up the stairs. He goes, "Yo, bless up." And I turned to Kat and I said, "You as a woman will never have that experience. You will never know what that's like. That's a guy thing." Yeah, it was pretty fun, all things considered. I'm not gnawing and thrashing because I'm watching K-pop Demon Hunters, a pretty good movie. What I did find curious was near the end of the film when Jinu, the lead of the K-popper boy band, the Saja Boys, when he sacrifices himself, at that moment where he's like taking the full blast, all the girls in the theater like screamed. They were like, "No! Jinu!" And I just looked around like, have you guys not seen the movie before? Have you not seen it yet? Is this new to you? Did you not know that this happens? Did you turn it off right before the end? It was just so bizarre. It was like they'd never seen it. It was like in the Woshige clip, the "What are you standing up for?" The way that one of the announcers, I can't remember who was on commentary, but the way that like one of the commentaries is just like beside himself. It's like he's watching his mom get executed in front of him by the mob, where he's like, "Woshige, no! He's like that guy, that fucking British guy on TikTok. What's his name? It's like Lewis Stewardson or something. I was looking him up the other day. He's that British guy who just does those like skits where it's like POV. The paramedic got to the scene and realized it was his son who's already dead. And it's just him on his knees in like a British paramedic's uniform, just screaming to the sky, "No!" Sorry, I saw that blew out the audio levels super hard, but that's what I love that. I love those videos where people are just scrolling through his account and it's just that in different scenarios over and over and over again. That's what it reminded me of. That guy's awesome. I love that guy. So that was pretty fun. And then the next day we went to go see Citizen Kane. My dad, there was a screening at the Stanford Theater, which I've mentioned a few times before, of Citizen Kane. And it was a double feature with a movie I'd never heard of called Gilda. Citizen Kane, my dad was like, "Well, we got to go see it." And, I invited Kat to it, so the three of us went. I'd never seen it before, and actually she hadn't either. Of course, my dad had seen it because he's the big like classic film buff. It's one of the things, like, you guys know how I talk about video game stuff. That's the way my dad talks about when you used to get to like he starts breaking down like the date. It was like 1961, and it had this guy and this guy, and this guy was known for like this, but in this role he was doing more this, and that was really crazy for the time. And she, oh my god, you should, in the 60s she was, oh my god. That's what he does. So he's a big classic film, a buff, a big nerd about it. And Citizen Kane, it's kind of known as the Citizen Kane of movies, like one of the best of all time. And so naturally, I mean, that piques my curiosity a little bit. So, is Citizen Kane, how is it? What did I think of it from a 2025 perspective? I think I was actually a little surprised. I was surprised at how much I liked it. One of the things that all of the talk, it's the greatest movie ever made, to the point that it's boring, and it creates this, it almost creates this backlash to like, well, no, actually, it's not it's like the Beatles or whatever. Actually, I think the Beatles suck. You think the Beatles suck, man? Really? Come on, man. Like, they suck? That's like Citizen Kane, right? But I try to go into experiences. I try to meet the thing on its own terms. That's how I think of it. I try not to go in with like big expectations about what something's gonna be, or I just want it to, okay, what is this giving me? Not what do I want from it, what is it giving me? Although I guess it slightly changes with adaptations of stuff. Sometimes it colors my perception. But for the most part, I try to take things as they are. And going in with that, even though the cultural context of how Citizen Kane sits in film discussion, that's a good movie. That was actually a really good movie. I was really fascinated by it. In fact, I started falling asleep partway through the movie because I, like, on accident, I just sort of forgot to eat for like 10 hours. And just like, I don't know, it just happens. It's not usual. It's just, I love eating. I do. I just forgot to eat for like 10 hours, and I was really running into just low energy fatigue. And I was annoyed because I was like, damn, I'm actually really interested in what's happening in this movie. So I think to like talk about, like, you could talk about the benefits and like the pros and the cons of the film. Why is Citizen Kane one of the best movies of all? Why is it the best movie of all time? Usually that comes down to a couple things. Number one, it was really different. It was one of the first movies, at least for a wide audience, that tried out a non-linear story structure, a story told out of order, but at the same time it's extremely easy to follow. It kind of like I'm trying to think of it lands into a it's a little boogie pop for the time. I'm not going to get into fucking boogie pop. It's essentially Charles Foster Kane is this guy who is the biggest newspaper mogul in America in 1948, I think. And he dies. And his last words are Rosebud. And no one knows what that means. So as this newspaper is trying to write up a thing about his legacy, he's loosely based on like William Randolph Hearst and some of the other big newspaper moguls of the time. They're writing up his legacy. They want to find out what Rosebud means. So they send out a reporter whose face is almost always in shadow, which is an interesting choice. He's basically like an audience surrogate in that way, which is actually kind of an interesting way to frame an audience surrogate character that I'm a little surprised isn't used more. Because really, Kane is the main character. Essentially, it's him going around to different people from Kane's life, like his ex-wives, his, people who knew him or were related to him, his best friend, and just asking them about who he was and what do you think Rosebud means. And it's told in, honestly, a pretty straightforward way. It's just that there's like, okay, first flashback to his childhood, next flashback to his him as a young man, next flashback him as a slightly older man, and you're going linearly through time, just in between these episodes. there's the framing device of the reporter going around interviewing people. Orson Welles, it's insane. Like, my dad was like, he was only 26 when he wrote, directed, and starred in this. I think he wrote it. Did he write it? Was it written by Kane writer? Partially. Okay, at least produced by, starring, directed. Co-written by two other people, though. I'm assuming as the director he had some influence on the script, though. And I was like, he only did that when he was 26. And I was like, wow, thank you for making me feel like shit, Dad. Orson Welles gives a great performance. The aging that he does throughout the film is actually quite impressive. I totally believe that this is a guy throughout his whole life, that you're actually watching him grow up. I think obviously it's obviously a different actor when he's a kid, but once he hits a young man, that's all Orson Welles from then to the end of the movie, and it's really well done for the time. The quality of the cameras might have something to do with that, but it's extremely believable. He is this charismatic, he's this sort of enigmatic guy. He has all this charisma and this real lust for life, and he's always got confidence that he can do it, but at the same time he's got these weird motives, and you're never quite sure why he's doing what he's doing. Like, what drove him to buy a newspaper? What drives him to become a politician? He'll give you he'll be like, I bought the paper because I just think it would be fun. He's becoming a politician because he has sympathy for the lower class. But all of these are really called into question throughout the film. What is his actual motivation? And that's really the question that's the center of the film, which is what the newspaper reporter is asking is, what is Rosebud? What does Rosebud is the key to Kane's character, and that's what you're trying to get at. So for most of the movie, you're seeing the outer layer of Kane trying to figure out what's there at the center. And the answer ultimately, I don't think, what the ending of Citizen Kane. You know what Citizen Kane's about. The ending is so, and the first scene, the first flashback is him as a little kid growing up in this poor family. He's like the only child of these two parents. They run an orphanage that's like extremely downtrodden. It's winter time. The father is implied to be abusive and kind of a drunkard. The mother is really strained and tortured looking. And Kane, by this sort of almost miracle, I'm not sure exactly, I forget exactly how it was arranged, ends up being adopted by this rich, I believe, banker. And that totally changes his life. And there's this, he doesn't really want to leave his home, despite how fucked up it is. He doesn't want to leave what he knows, but he's basically torn away from it. And in a weird, emotional way, emotionally it's weird. He's torn away from what he knows, even though what he knows is probably bad and harmful to him. And he's given this lush, lavish life where he can basically have anything. So there's a give and a take. And he almost doesn't know how to, it's like he doesn't know what to do, how he feels about himself. The most important item in the movie is this sled that he's playing with at the start, and he's so, we'll get you a new sled, and you get this shot of the sled as it, he's leaving the home. His sled is in the snow. It starts piling up on it and burying it, his old life is being buried and left behind. And then at a later Christmas, he's given a replacement, which is this really fancy sled, something much more ornate and handcrafted and expensive looking, as opposed to his rickety old wooden sled that's just some boards screwed to some scrap metal. And I forget if he likes it or not, but it's like, this is the replacement. This is the replacement for your old life. Of course, at the end of the movie, it's revealed that out of all of this stuff he owns, all of these treasures and these riches and these things that he's bought, these statues and pieces of artwork, the one thing that he kept, that one thing that he went back for, that he got best somehow, it's not really explained how, I don't think, is the Rosebud sled. It must have been some local brand called Rosebud, and that was basically the missing piece. That was the reason that he was the way he was. His whole life, something was kind of empty. You've been trying to find out what's at the core of Charles Kane's person, what's at the core of his character. You're seeing just the shell and the surrounding, the exterior around it, but what's inside? And the answer is this big gaping hole that he feels like he just lost something irreplaceable that, again, probably would have hurt him and was this terrible thing, but it's like he still feels kind of unfulfilled. He's in this constant struggle to fulfill himself, which leads to him acting selfishly, and it leads to him trying to sort of fill that up with material possessions, like an occasion on top of just the general human imperfections he has and these moments of faltering in his morality and all that. You can see the guy that he wants to be when he first opens the newspaper, and he at the last minute adds this statement that's going to go out with their first issue, that it's like a declaration of his ethics, and that he's always going to tell the truth. And then you see over time all of the ways in which he becomes compromised. Really by himself and like his own interests. It's a really genuinely fascinating character study of this interesting person, this very interesting character, and trying to figure out what makes him tick. On top of just the great performance by Orson Welles, and everyone else in the movie does a great job. I love the whole sequence in the movie where he has like I don't think, maybe at the time they couldn't really even imply sex, but he has what's essentially a one-night stand, cheating on his wife. His marriage with his wife is sort of on the rocks. And while he's running for, I believe, governor of New York, he has a one-night stand with this sort of struggling. She wanted to be a singer, and then her dreams or whatever, and she works somewhere else now. And that gets found out, and his political rival exposes him, and it ruins his... It's actually really funny that his whole political career is ruined because he cheated on his wife. That's like very quaint. I think at one point, like, that goes in the category with like the Dean scream, that some guy just did a sort of silly scream during his campaign run and it tanked how everyone looked at him. It really feels like another world when I hear about stuff like that. It makes no sense to me. Like I remember hearing about it and I was like, what? Like, he just screamed and then everyone thought he was a joke. Like the current president is like a pedophile rapist. And like no one gives a shit. Actually, who's cheated on his wife like 10 times. Crazy. So he's like in this, he just has to like commit to the relationship with this girl. And I think he does like her, you know. I think he feels like some feelings for her. But so he like gets her, he sets up her whole singing dream, and he gives her singing lessons and all that. And the problem is that she sucks. She's a terrible singer. And in response to this, he just triples down on it. Like his he's I didn't know that the gif or the clip of him standing up while clapping, the context of that scene is that they're at the opera for like the opening night of the show that she's the star of, and she's just given this horrible performance, and everyone just kind of golf claps for her, like very politely, and Kane is like seeing this, and you can just see him like he's so focused, like his eyes are just drilling forward into the air, and and after everyone stopped clapping, he just starts and like booming his hands together to clap extra loud, and then he just keeps going, and he stands up to give her a standing ovation, and then everyone feels like super awkward, so they kind of start clapping again. It's so funny. He just ends up abusing his powers as a newspaper editor to like push out good reviews for her. It's great. At one point near the back half of the movie, apparently Orson Welles thought that people were going to get tired because the movie was long. So for one random scene transition, there's just a super loud like macaw on screen in a fade in. It just goes like this incredibly shrill shriek that was meant to wake the audience up. And I was closing my eyes because I was tired, and it woke me up. Like, it got me. Orson Welles, genius play, Mr. Welles. Excellent show. Excellent bird call. Excellent call on the bird. It's a genuinely really good movie. Not to mention all of the great directing choices. I love this scene where the reporter is going. It's the first flashback. It's him talking to. He gets access to the personal journals of the guy who adopted Kane. And because he wants to go back and read through about their relationship and to see if he can find any clues as to the what Rosebud means. And there's a lot of just cavernous spaces in this movie, like including like Kane's house near the end. It's this absolutely like disgustingly massive mansion with this huge I don't even know what you would call it, like rooms that are only in rich people houses, like the massive place with there's a fireplace. There's a massive chamber with this fireplace that's like as big as a room would be, and this huge staircase and like tables and chairs, and the staircase leads up to the second where there's more stuff. Like maybe it's like an atrium, I guess, like a central hall. Just like this massive room. And almost a precursor to that is this scene where he walks into the records room, the archives room, and it's just this basically featureless room that, because you can't see the like the walls, you can just see the wall. The shot is from behind him. He's just looking at this big, also like quite Spartan featureless table, just like a block you dropped on the ground, with this book on it, and all you can see is the back wall. You can't see anything to the sides. You can't see any corners, and it makes the room feel really big because the lighting is also really. There's just like this window overhead, and you can see the shafts of light through the dust or the smoke. It looks otherworldly. It's huge and huge and desolate looking. It's such a simple shot, but the blocking is so striking that it makes it feel momentous. It feels like you're about to see something really important. And indeed you are, because it's like the setup, it ties back into the end of the movie. It's like the setup for his whole character. Like really, really good stuff in this movie. Is it the greatest film of all time? I don't know. I don't know if I'd say that. Like, there's movies that I like more than Citizen Kane. You're probably not going to watch it and say, this is my favorite movie. I can tell you what it is. I don't know if it's the best film of all time, but it is the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood of movies. So if you're not familiar with the show Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, I'm not really going to go into detail about it, but it's one of the most popularly acclaimed anime of all time. And on the website, My Anime List, where users can submit their ratings for various, whatever anime they watch, and then those are aggregated into, like, you know, the top, the list. Every show has a ranking on there. Every show or movie or whatever has its own, is in the overall ranking. It's like an IMDb for anime. I'm assuming my audience already knows this. I just like explaining stuff to be pedantic. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is the perpetual number one anime of all time. Just based off of aggregate user scores. Occasionally, a show will pop up that's really popular, and the sheer momentum will dethrone Brotherhood for a little while, and then eventually, as sure as the sun rises and sets, it will return to the number one. It will just self-correct back to being the number one anime of all time. I've seen Brotherhood. For a long time, I would have called it my favorite anime. It was one of the first anime I ever watched, really. And it's a great show for people who are getting into anime because it is a genuinely really good story. It's like 5 seasons. It's a fair length, but you can get through that. It's a doable amount. It's a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end that's easy to follow. It's got great characters, great music, great animation. The storytelling is pretty on point the whole time. There's no part of FMAB that, like, everyone says, well, this is the part when it gets bad. It's just kind of like really good the whole time. And everyone agrees on that. And that's what's more important. Is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood actually the best anime of all time? I don't know. I don't know if I'd say that. Exactly. I think even people who love the show might not necessarily say that. Especially the more of, like, the great anime you watch, right? But it's the one that everyone can agree on. And for the community, for the sake of discussion about anime, it's more useful to just have one show that we can say is the number one, just for stability's sake. And then we can kind of talk around that. Citizen Kane is like that for movies. It's probably not, how would you even quantify the greatest film of all time? Like, it's a silly proposition when you really get down to it. It's so subjective. How would you compare Citizen Kane to, like, one of the great comedies or the great horror films, right? It's not even a useful title to begin with. If you want to actually talk about, what stuff people are going to enjoy or what is good or whatever, right? But for the sake of this film discussion, it's easier if they just have this one movie that they can just show film students and say, this is just like there's like nothing wrong with the movie. Like, if you have, like, any serious critiques of Citizen Kane mostly come down to, like, yeah, this is just kind of personal preference. It is really hard. Like, I don't even believe that much in objective quality. I think that there is some standard of objective quality, but it is as close as you can get to just being objectively perfect. Like, there isn't anything really wrong with it, and there's a lot of things really good about it. As well as the fact that it was historically important. It pioneered, again, that style of storytelling, several editing styles. It was a very influential film for its time, and so that's a good part to study. I think it was huge. It was a big hit, so it also makes sense. I believe it was a big hit, and if it was extremely popular and extremely good, it's probably worth checking out if you're a student of that medium. So that's where I think Citizen Kane really lies. That's where its strength is, which is that it's just nice. It's just nice to have it there for stability's sake. I think it's a little silly to get really I don't know, dictatorial about it, where you're like, this is the best movie. You can't say that there's another movie you think is better than this. Like, no, go ahead. One of the most influential moments of my life, actually, is the episode of Cinemassacre's Monster Madness on King Kong. Monster Madness was the series that James Rolfe, I think he does it still. I haven't checked it out in a bit. I haven't watched his stuff in a while, but he was like extremely influential on me as a kid. Can you tell? And he loves horror movies, so he had this whole series called Monster Madness dedicated to talking about horror movies every October. It was like one video a day. He did 31 videos. And one of the most influential videos I've ever seen was the one where he talks about King Kong, which is one of his favorite movies. And he's talking about all of the techniques that it's innovated upon, all of the different readings of the film, the way that how compelling the story, like the way that the story is told, and how influential it is, how iconic it is. And there's a part of the video where he says, because he went to film school, he says, like, you go to film school and a professor puts Citizen Kane on your desk and says, this is the best movie ever made. But why? Why does that have to be the best movie ever made? When you look at everything that this one did, everything that this film did, why can't I say that King Kong's the best movie ever made? And as like an 8 or 9-year-old kid hearing that, having grown up, and at that time, you just listen to what adults say. Adults tell you about the world. You're used to that. And that applies to art. And I'd already heard Citizen Kane's the best movie of all time. You're exposed to it like immediately as a kid. If you grow up, at least in America. I don't know about if in Asia, if it's as highly regarded. I had already been exposed to that and just thought, well, I guess that's the best movie of all time. Because, like my mom said that she heard someone say that. I guess that's true. And him saying that completely altered my view of art, like forever. It completely changed the way that I look at things. Not just in like how much credence I give to other people's opinions and how I like should think about them, but also about thinking how you can like think for yourself. You can think for yourself and make arguments that would be unorthodox. That someone would say that might just think of King Kong as a silly movie about a gorilla, like a gorilla puppet. I don't think there's a guy in a suit at any point. I think it's all stop motion? Stop motion and puppetry. But that you can sit down and have a serious argument, make a serious argument that it's the best movie of all time. And I don't even know if I would agree with that take. I haven't actually seen King Kong. But just the fact that he did that was really influential on me. So I think that calling Citizen Kane the best movie ever is like, if I don't take it that seriously, I don't take the idea of a best X of all time that seriously. It's just an aspect of conversation. It's like a focal point. And also, to some degree, a point of common ground that people can talk about. Like people can talk around. Like if you are also really into classic film, you've probably also seen Citizen Kane. Anyway, that was the movie, the Citizen Kane of movies. Oh, we also watched Gilda, which is like a noir crime thing set in a casino in Argentina. It was pretty cool. That's it. It was good. I want to talk now. We're going to talk about video games. Yeah, Gamescom happened. Gamescom happened like 2 weeks ago, and I'm talking about it now. That's right. We here on the Cellarcast, we strike while the iron is hot. The iron is so hot that I'm striking before it's even there. I'm hitting the anvil, and the hammer is bouncing back and splitting my skull open. That's how hot I strike it. I'm heating up the anvil with my repeated hammer strikes. There's two things that I really wanted to talk about from Gamescom, just to quickly go over. One of them is a preview that we got for Crimson Desert, which is a game that's kind of been on my back burner for a while. I have had my eye on it. It's one of these things that's been in development for years. You might have heard the name and thought Crimson Desert, like Black Desert Online. Yes, it's the same studio, or at least the same company. And it is set in the Black Desert world. I have never played Black Desert because it's a Korean MMO, and I value my time more than that. But Crimson Desert is like a character. It's like an open world character action game, which I talked about the demo for an indie game that I didn't like that demo very much, and that was doing a similar thing. I am very impressed with what I've seen of Crimson Desert so far, namely that I am just taken by the combat system. The combat system looks absolutely zany. I have just seen so many mechanics that the player has access to across like different weapons and magic things and all sorts of stuff that just are inherent to you. You can like run around and do like a magic dash, and you can slide and knock a guy over and then like hit him, and you can like do it like a running leap into like a kick and knock a shield guy over, or you can like grab him. There's like grabs and throws, and you can grab a guy and then throw him into another guy and then do like a charge attack, and like the charge attack is like this big ground pound thing that throws a bunch of guys off balance, and then you hit one of the guys while he's staggered, and then you do like a counter attack on a dude, and when you counter him, you hit him back with like a sword strike that's magical and freezes him, and then you can pick that guy up and throw him at another dude. And there's like a different weapons, and there's a dude with a shield, but the guy in the footage is like, he's got a spear equipped, and he does this move where he runs forward at the shield guy, and he like sticks the spear into the ground and like uses it like a pole vault and kicks, like lifts himself off the ground and like kicks the shield guy and knocks him over. And it looked so fucking cool. It just looks so cool. It's got like a trillion mechanics. It could be a total mess. And honestly, I expect it to be very unoptimized at launch, because this is like an Unreal Engine 5-ass game from the looks of it. It looks like a UE5 game. But it's it just looks cool, just on sheer spectacle alone, and I kind of wanted to mention it. The other big news for me, and really because Crimson Desert gets like new gameplay every once in a while, I've just never really had a good excuse to talk about it. Dawn of War 4 was announced. Warhammer 40k Dawn of War 4. What a mouthful of a title. I am a big fan of Dawn of War 1. I tried Dawn of War 2. I kind of bounced off of it. They're two different styles of games. And that's important to understand where DAO 4 is coming from. Because So the first Dawn of War is a very, probably your traditional idea of an RTS, but done in a cool Warhammer way. Exactly what I want out of a Warhammer game. Like I've said many times before, just take an existing thing and then just like paint it over with Warhammer stuff, all the stuff that you would expect. The first, it's all about base building and resource management, getting resources to build more buildings and units and upgrading your units and making a big army and then throwing them at the opponent and overrunning them and having a grand old time. That's really like the core of the Dawn of War 1 experience. And it's got a fun campaign. It's got multiple different playable armies that are different factions and races from the Warhammer 40k universe, and they all play very differently. They have totally different like styles of upgrade paths. Some of them just don't have access to certain types of units to fulfill certain roles, but they've got other stuff. They've got unique mechanics. Just really cool game with tons of variety and really satisfying RTS gameplay. The second game is a very different approach. Not bad, just not quite something that I am really as into. It's a much more micro-focused game. It puts a lot more focus on the smaller scope squad-based mechanics where you have individual characters in a smaller group. And you've got a couple of these groups, but you have much more control over the customization of them. They have like equipments and inventory. And you have an overall equipment, and you can arm them in different ways. They have different upgraded trees. The game also has a much more in-depth system of cover and like terrain advantages, which were just kind of it was a very mild mechanic in the original Dawn of War, where there's some high ground and low ground, and there's some places where the terrain gives some different effects, like it's harder to just for things to hit it. Very subtle, like small part of the game. Dawn of War 2, it's much more important, like groundedness and or height or elevation, the shape of the terrain, line of sight. There are like buildings that you can get a unit, like a squad member to go up into and like snipe down from. It's a lot more like on the ground, in depth, micro. Some people prefer that to the original. I lean more to the original. I just find like that whole gameplay of that macro level base building and army amassing to be really fun and satisfying. DAO 2 it's good. It just didn't quite grab me as much. Dawn of War 3 attempted to be a blend between these two styles, and it failed miserably, mainly because they sandblasted off what made either of them very interesting and was essentially a worst of both worlds. I haven't played it, but I have watched enough videos on the game to just be able to, like, observe what they did wrong. Essentially, it was like, let's have the big armies of Dawn of War 1, but let's also have the terrain stuff from Dawn of War 2, but we can't, they're trying to, so you get the big armies, but there isn't really an emphasis on base building, weirdly enough, and then you do get, like, certain unit customization stuff, but it's way shallower than DAO 2. And the terrain is the whole terrain system is almost entirely removed. Like they try to emulate it by having just like, here's a bubble where you take less damage. That's it. Also, there's only 3 playable races, which was ridiculous. DAO 1 launched with 4 at least. And of those 3 races, they literally just ripped off StarCraft. Which is funny because StarCraft was kind of a 40k ripoff to begin with, to the point that there's like a conspiracy theory about how it was originally a Warhammer game that they lost the rights to. They turned Space Marines, Eldar, and I think it's Tyranids, actually? Who are the 3 races in Dawn of War 1? Or, Dawn of War 3 races. Is it orcs? Space Marines? Yeah, it's orcs. Okay, instead of... Which is weird. You could have done Tyranids. That would have been a cool new inclusion. Because the Zerg are just Tyranids. But no, it's Space Marines, Eldar, and orcs. And they are the StarCraft Marines... whatever the StarCraft, I don't know the StarCraft races, the like robotic guys, and then the Zerg, and they're all like just streamlined, quote unquote, and the mechanics are taken out, and a lot of the flavor, which is like the whole point of making a 40k game, is the flavor and how that influences the gameplay identity of every faction. Is gone, and they're all kind of standardized with like tiny little deviations. On top of, from what I understand, the map design being quite boring. So Dawn of War 3 was a big flop and kind of blew. 4 is actually being made by a different studio. It's not Relic. It is what are they called? They made, what is it, Frostpunk? I believe they made Frostpunk. Oh my god, can you just tell me? King Art Games. It wasn't Frostpunk. Iron Harvest. That's what they are. Iron Harvest. That was their a previous RTS that they made, which had like a steampunky sort of aesthetic to it. So King Art is handling this, and from a lot of the interviews that they've been given, it seems pretty encouraging. Namely, what is very exciting to me is that this is more of a sequel. They stated this is really a sequel to Dawn of War 1. It's a sequel to DAO 1 in gameplay with maybe you could say maybe a little smidgen of some ideas from Dawn of War 2, but really it's just kind of RTS stuff that was never quite in the original Dawn of War, but they're adding in now. It's essentially, from the gameplay that I've seen, I've watched a couple YouTube videos from people who got hands-on with it at Gamescom. It's essentially like classic Dawn of War with the upgrade trees and the different unit customizations and all that and the base building, and it plays just like that. But there's a couple extra little things, such as basically more pronounced hero units. That's the closest that you could get to the second game. More pronounced hero units with their own special abilities and stuff that are kind of like the big supers, right? And I'm fine with that. That's basically just, what Warcraft 3 did. It's just Dawn of War 1, but there's this additional mechanic of armies have sort of like marquee leader unit guys who are a little more specialer, which the first game already kind of had. You did have like a leader guy, but it looks like they're fleshing that aspect out a bit more. It looks cool. There are 4 races. There will be 4... races? Sort of. There are 4 playable factions at launch. Those being Space Marines, Adeptus Mechanicus, Orcs, and Necrons, which I find interesting. So there's, at first, that might seem like it has some notable absences, which I agree with, but I'm actually not opposed to that lineup for an initial launch. The biggest thing is like, no chaos? And yeah, no chaos. I am actually okay with a Warhammer game just saying, you know what? Just this once. It's not just chaos. Chaos has this sort of... Yeah, I like Chaos well enough. There's a couple Chaos Marine sub-factions that I like. But I'm fine. I'm cool with Chaos. I generally like all of the 40k factions to some extent, but it is kind of tiring how it always becomes chaos was behind it all. That's the whole. They're like Dr. Wily, you know. It's or Sigma from Mega Man X. No matter what the initial threat was, it was chaos. The Space Marine games did this in both games. In the first game, it's the orcs, but really it's chaos. And then in the second game, it was Tyranids. Oh, but it was really chaos behind it all. Which I can kind of forgive in those games because they're kind of meant to be like my first Warhammer experience. And that's a decent. It's kind of like, I think of the Space Marine games as good like sampling platters of the 40K setting. So I don't really mind it that much. It gets a little exhausting in the book sometimes when it's like chaos was behind it all. Because it also leads to certain factions just being like the jobbers. Like that literally happens to the orcs and the Tyranids. A lot of writers have trouble just making the orcs the villains of the story, or Tyranids. So usually what it happens is the initial story is motivated by the orcs or Tyranids or something else, and then chaos shows up. And that's just like a little tiring. So I actually don't mind chaos being gone, and the fact that like Necrons are also a really good big bad. They were behind it all. They're also another good like behind it all sort of villain. But they're used a little less often, and Necrons are cool. There's a lot of love for them. They're a great faction. They're a really compelling part of the lore. So I actually don't mind it. And also, at first I was like, really, the Mechanicus are their own whole separate faction, which is interesting for a couple reasons. Number one, Mechanicus weren't actually playable on the tabletop until like 8th edition, which was 40K 8th edition release date 2017. Damn, that was actually way more recent than I thought. They were not their own army until quite recently on the tabletop in the, you know, for a franchise that's been going since 87. So the Dawn of War games have never really had an opportunity to represent them. So I think it's actually really cool that one of the sort of fan favorite, everyone loves AdMech. I think everyone likes AdMech at least a little bit. They're kind of a fan favorite, and it's actually really neat to see them being represented for the first, like, this is their first real opportunity to get some spotlight. Also, they are significantly different from the Space Marines, so but even though they're both Imperium factions, they both completely different feel and vibe and gameplay. Like, I will expect them to be completely different and probably very interesting. Add on to that if this is a game with the Necrons, that the Necrons are often a foil for the AdMech. There is literally like a running gag about how Necron tomb worlds keep getting reawakened by Mechanicus like tech priests going in and being like, what's this shit? Ooh, I love technology. And then waking up a giant skeleton army, robot skeleton army. So I'm actually down with the faction selection. I'm not super bummed at Chaos being gone. Also, the Guard, the Imperial Guard are in game, but they're just kind of, they're not like a playable army. They're just there. Funny enough, just like Dawn of War 1, there's a couple missions where you get support from the Guard, but I don't even think you can control them. They're just an NPC faction that's friendly to you and will fight with you. And then the first expansion, Winter Assault, made them playable, and that is a bad expansion. That's a bad campaign. Do not play Winter Assault. I tried. The biggest missing part is easily Eldar. That's the one thing that I go, no Eldar, really. But I will say that with the factions that are missing, that is a great opportunity for expansion content. Because imagine having an expansion that was Eldar and Chaos, and you actually got to have a story about their specific rivalry, which I think could be a bit more fresh of a story to tell in a Warhammer game. It's usually just Marines versus Chaos Marines, but actually delving a bit into the history and the conflict between the Eldar and Chaos, like if you made it Slaneshi specific. It would be cool if they actually represent. It would be so cool. I don't know how deep they're going to go with this game. It would be so cool if we actually got representation for all of the distinct Chaos Marine sub-factions in some way. Like if you got all 4 Chaos Gods, because I believe in the first game it's just Word Bearers who are just like Chaos Undivided, which is like, okay, fine, sure. Or they're Black Legion? I don't remember. I want to say they're Word Bearers. Okay, fine, sure. But like, wouldn't it be cool if you could actually make? I think it would be great if when they do introduce Chaos and it's Marines, they actually make it like Black Legion and you get representation from all the 4 different gods. That would probably be the way that you would work it in, because they are like an amalgamation of the 4 different Chaos god worshippers. And maybe my beloved Night Lords. Ooh, perhaps. But Dawn of War 4. I am excited for that. I think that's... I got my eye on the lookout. I'm looking forward to it greatly. And it's cool to see that back-to-back with Dawn of War 1 remastered, which is great. So I'm glad that they're actually going back to that well. I'm very excited for more Dawn of War content. I enjoyed that first game a lot. Want to talk about some interviews. So one of the most ridiculous interviews that I read, which was supplanted by our next one. But the first one was from an Evo. So Evo has been putting out a bunch of content about like the legacy of Mortal Kombat and its history. So they put out this video called The Legacy of Mortal Kombat featuring Ed Boon. This is on Evo FGC. And this is due to largely to like the Legacy collection coming out. So I imagine some of this is like, and maybe some of this is ending up in the collection. I don't know. But he's giving this interview, and I'm reading some quotes. This has been quotated by Event Hubs. So he's talking about like the progression of the series and why certain story decisions were made, and like running into that initial, the Mortal Kombat 2, there's not enough space in the memory to include every character. How do we justify that story-wise? So he goes further and further and further till he gets to Mortal Kombat 11. And he says, each game, we wanted it to be bigger stakes, so more threatening and bigger bosses. We had done a time jump forward in Mortal Kombat X. All the characters were 25 years older. They had kids and whatnot. When we reached Chronica, we had gotten so grand and so big that we were like, we just can't think of someone even bigger looking down over all of that. Liu Kang had won and he had become the new fire god. And we thought, you know what? Let's try to scale down. But at the same time, we also wanted to plant the seed like we did in Mortal Kombat 11, that there were many Mortal Kombats, and in some of them Shang Tsung won, and in some Liu Kang won, and there was a crossing of those two in Mortal Kombat 1. So the main reason we reset it is because it had gotten so big that we thought the only direction to go now is to shrink it down again. Ed, what the fuck are you talking about? I see exactly where he's coming from. halfway. Because, yeah, it's like at the end of MK11, they fight the fucking goddess, like the Titan of Time. Like of the father, one of the like precursors to the gods who oversees all of time and all the different timelines and stuff. And then you fight her, and then there's this climactic thing, and it's like, oh, there's different timelines maybe. And then we reset. We reset back to a new world that Liu Kang creates, where he's just like, I'm going to kind of fix things. I'm going to put people in places where they are less likely to become evil bastards, and maybe some people can live happier lives and whatnot. And for a lot of it, he just has to kind of wait it out, just sort of see what happens. And then he just becomes an observer for a lot of history. And it was kind of cool. And you know what? I had like a gigantic rant, like an hour-long rant about the Mortal Kombat 1 story mode in a podcast episode, if you want to listen to that. I forget which one it is or what it was called. And for like the first half of the game, that game's story, it's pretty good and it works. And I thought it was kind of compelling, and there's some good character stuff. And like there's good moments between like characters like Johnny and Kenshi. Baraka gets some really good moments. He's not just a monster man. I thought some of the stuff that they did with the royal family was kind of interesting. I liked how Shao Kahn was just like a general at this point. And I like a lot of these aspects and these different takes on the characters. It felt like a really cool setup. Reptile comes in. You learn a little about Reptile and his people, and then Ashra, and these cool characters from the 3D era, but they've got these much better designs. And that was neat. Fucking Nitara's back, and she's played by Megan Fox very poorly. And then at the halfway point, it starts getting a little weird, and from that point onwards, it just begins to unravel just further and further and further until the moment where I just sat back, which was when they pan to this shot of a pyramid, and I went, no. Guys, come on. And Shang Tsung and Crunchy, as I call him, Crunchy, are sitting. They're like standing at the top of the pyramid, and Liu Kang appears from a portal with 1,000 alternate versions of the Mortal Kombat characters. And he goes, Shang Tsung, this is your last opportunity to stand down. And then Shang Tsung goes, Liu Kang, but what about this? And then he like waves his hand, and a portal opens behind him, and 1,000 evil versions of the Mortal Kombat characters walk out. And then Shang Tsung is like, Liu Kang, suck my dick. And then they all run at each other and they fight. And I just sat back and I went, wow, this is like schlock. This is trash. And it wasn't like Mortal Kombat is okay to get schlocky. Its origins are in kind of silly martial arts movies and like blood sport and stuff like that. And in many ways, those original games had an element of campiness to them. They were kind of silly. And yes, there was a story that was taken kind of seriously, but they weren't afraid to do things that were a little goofy, especially in the tone of the gameplay. Some of the fatalities are straight up humorous, right? Before you get into like the literal joke fatalities, like the babalities and stuff like that, or the friendships. And, you know, there's always been this aspect of Mortal Kombat is a series that sort of jostles the line between a serious martial arts, a mystical martial arts epic, and kind of like a goofy, kung fu action flick. It's very Big Trouble in Little China, right? I think that was the literal inspiration for Raiden's hat I think that's why he looks like that, is that exact movie. Like, that's what they were into when they were making the game. I don't have a problem with Mortal Kombat being silly and even schlocky and stupid. My problem is when you start telling, like, a story that's actually, like, going for something with a lot of narrative weight to it. And you have this one tone. It's a problem of contrast. That the tone of the first half of the game is taking itself relatively seriously and is a little more, I don't know, grounded for what it is. And then by the end of the game, literally nothing matters. It feels like it has gotten so big. We've gone from like this story of these couple characters coming together, and some of them don't like each other, and they go through these experiences and they make amends and stuff like that. And like this character building stuff that feels a lot more intimate and honestly very rewarding as an audience member. And then you jump to 20 billion people who are alternate versions of characters, the most impersonal thing you could possibly go to. And they're all beating each other up and killing each other and ripping each other's heads off because life doesn't matter, because nothing matters. It's like, if it's fine in like MK Armageddon, because that game is, again, like narratively consistent with the previous games. But if you spent the first half of MK Armageddon having like a serious character driven story and then the fucking pyramid shit happened, it would be dumb. That's just what like MK1 is, but like times 10. I literally cannot, it's such a ridiculous statement to say that we're going to shrink the world down again. You shrunk it down for like 50% of the game, and then at the end, you literally made the setting bigger than ever. You introduced like infinite multiversal dimensions with infinite variations of different characters. And it's like, no. If that was your goal, you failed. You failed. All the time. Like, I love Ketchup and Mustard's videos. I love their videos about history of Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat characters and the tournament scene and all that. I love that stuff. I think a lot of MK lore is really fun. A lot of the characters have really compelling designs and these classic looks, like the ninjas and stuff. And all the time I say to myself, man, I really want to like Mortal Kombat. It's just that, like, Mortal Kombat seemingly doesn't want me to like it. And it's sad. It's a little depressing. What isn't depressing is this incredible interview with the producer of War of the Worlds 2025. So the producer of Watwa, which I talked about on a previous podcast, one of the best bad movies released in recent years, did an interview with a YouTube channel called Tony's Film Club with the movie's editor, Charles Ansel. The producer is named Patrick Aiello? I think he's Italian. Aiello, I suppose. Insists that there isn't any product placement in the movie. Quote, "We never intended for Amazon to release the film." So there is some fascinating, like, what is your interpretation? There's some real death of the author going on here. So he says a bunch of ridiculous shit in this interview, several of which I'll read some quotations from, as sourced from IGN. Links below. He says, Amazon didn't see it until it was all the way done. We never intended for Amazon to release the movie. We always thought Universal was going to release the movie theatrically. So, first of all, that's hilarious. You're like, okay. There is so much Amazon product placement in the movie. The day is literally saved by Roderick saying Prime shipping and pulling out the Amazon delivery drone to deliver the magic USB stick to Ice Cube. So why is all of that Amazon shit in the movie? Quote, Bruce, mind you, this was made during the pandemic. In the early months, when you weren't going to the grocery store and you couldn't get toilet paper, who was bringing us individually to all of our homes all of these products to keep us going, keep us neutral, keep us surviving? Amazon drivers. These individuals are unsung heroes. They are not identified as such. It's not people's dream to become delivery people, but at the end of the day, they are rendering a personal service to humanity, and they are doing so without ego. This is an insane statement. This is like the most insanely out of touch thing I've heard in so long. I have a lot of sympathy for Amazon drivers. In fact, any kind of delivery driver or mail carrier, a little bit. They do fuck up my packages sometimes. I don't order very often, but I've had packages just fucked up. But I do have sympathy, especially after doing the postal video and just reading people's anecdotes about what it's like to work for the postal service or for UPS or any kind of delivery service. And, you know, it seems fucking awful. It's I'm sure there's upsides. I'm sure there's nice parts to it, but the stress of being a delivery driver and working in that environment, and especially for Amazon, which are like noted slave drivers, seems horrible. And like that's like I had a whole thing in my head about how billionaires would just have you be a slave if they could. They would just use slave labor if they could, because they already do. That's what I think of when I think of Amazon delivery drivers. Honestly, I would say that they are people who work very hard and are horrifically, I think, overworked and abused by their employers, by this horrible corporate capitalistic machine in the service of consumerism. And like, I don't feel good about it. Like, I don't order from Amazon. I have a personal boycott. I've had a personal boycott of Amazon for like years. The only time I've broken it is if I needed something that was only available via Amazon. And I really didn't like doing that. But for the most part, I've been like pretty Amazon clean, and I always go for alternative marketplaces to get something. Describing them as unsung heroes who are like doing this tough job with no ego, that are rendering a personal service to humanity, is such a bizarre way to frame it, because it's like I feel like their conditions could improve a lot and they would be fun. I don't think that they enjoy being abused because like they're doing so. I don't think that's like a necessary part of the job. We could probably be fine without it. You might just have to wait like one extra day for your package to get there. Just like, what a gross thing to say. Later on, when they have the drone scene, they have the fucking Amazon logo in the corner of the screen of like the live feed of the drone at the whole time, which he claims was to make it less confusing. I don't know how that makes it less confusing. It was pretty obvious that was the drone footage because it's flying through the air and the editing is focusing on it, but sure. There's an incredible moment in the interview where he explains the moment where they bribe a homeless man to pick up the drone and like set it, like correct it because it fell upside down on the ground. They bribe a homeless man with like a $1,000 Amazon gift card. Actually, before that, they try to bribe him with free internet for a year. Like, well, he's homeless. What the fuck are you talking about? And then they're like, a $1,000 Amazon gift card. And then, and only then, does the homeless guy help them, and then he immediately gets vaporized. Apparently, the director or the producer thought that this was an uplifting moment where somebody sacrifices themselves for the greater good. Of course, only after being bribed with a $1,000 gift card. Which is like, no, it's actually horribly cynical. So when I say this is like a death of the author situation, you have to decide, is this guy just lying? Or is he really this stupid? You be the judge. All right, now we're going to talk about more stuff that I consumed. So I started reading Kinnikuman, the classic Japanese wrestling, I guess, like wrestling manga. Super-powered wrestling. Kinnikuman is a series that I have been aware of for years, but only ever on the periphery. It was never brought over to the US except for, funny enough, its sequel, Kinnikuman Ultimate Muscle, which also I don't think ever really took off very hard in the US, probably just because, one, it's just kind of a weird show, and two, it's like the hip new sequel to a thing that kids did not know about, because it's about Kinnikuman's son. So why did I decide to pick up good old Kinnikuman? I was watching a video by the YouTuber Bumbles McFumbles on, I think it's called One Move Wonders in Fighting Games, which is a really fun video. I don't watch his videos that often, but he's been going for a very long time, and his topics are generally pretty fun. One Move Wonders, which are characters who are good specifically, like they are in general bad characters competitively, but they are viable because they have one move. And it was actually, like, he starts out with an obvious one, like Captain Commando from Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Actually never goes for wobbling, never mentions ice climbers. And one of the characters he mentions is a character called The Mountain from the PS2 fighting game Kinnikuman Muscle Grand Prix 2. And, like, The Mountain as a character is just a giant rock man. Like, he is shaped like a mountain, and he's just a big human. He's not like the size of a mountain. He's just really big and shaped like one. And he's made of a rock, and he's wearing a karate gi. And he is, in general, a pretty low-tier character. Like, he's not very good. His frame data is terrible. He doesn't have a lot of good combos. But he has this one move that is, like, can deal, like, half your health. And he can get it if he techs a throw. Because that game has, like, a lot of little mechanics. It's like a sort of semi 3D fighting game. It actually looks pretty fun. I was watching some tournament footage for it. It looks pretty cool. He can, if he throw breaks you, he can confirm into a combo that knocks down, and then he has this special move that costs like a bar of meter, and you can build up to like 10 bars in this game. And it's just like a rock, like a bunch of rock spikes that shoot out in a line, but it hits like 5 times if you're on the ground and it hits OTG, and he can loop that like 4 times in a row. So if you've got the meter, you could just kill someone. So he's one of those weird characters who is generally bad, but wins a lot of the time because he wins in this very particular way. It was a fun video, but while I was watching it, I'm just watching all the background footage of Muscle Grand Prix 2, and I'm just seeing these characters, and I'm going, what the fuck is Kinnikuman about? Let me actually look this up. And so I started actually with the game's roster to just see who's in the game. And I found out about some characters like Spring Man, who is just like a spring with arms and legs and a face. He's a giant spring. Or Benki Man, the game's resident joke character, who is a living sentient urinal. Who has a move where he like scrubs himself, but it looks like he's just jerking off really aggressively. A guy named Planet Man, who is just like, his body is made up of multiple spheres that look like the planets of the solar system together, with a Vivzy Pop face with like the sharp teeth. And really what changed everything for me was the character Sneegator. I saw some footage of this guy and I'm like, why is he called Sneegator? He is an alligator sneaker hybrid. And like the front of his body is laced up like a shoe. And he can unlace himself to like shed his skin like a reptile to become different reptiles. Like a snake or a turtle. And his base form is an alligator. And his super move is that he fully unlaces to reveal a shoe. With like just a giant shoe. But inside of the shoe is a dinosaur's foot. Just the foot. And he crushes you. And I said, I have to fucking read Kinnikuman now. So, Kinnikuman is an interesting series. I am like a dozen or 2 chapters in. For the first 30 or so chapters, as I understand it, it started syndicating in 79 in Shonen Jump. And it started out actually as a one-shot manga that was made for, I think, just like a contest. It was like make a gag comic, something comedic, and enter it into this contest. And I believe it won and was run in the magazine. And that's how Kinnikuman starts. It got picked up for a full series. It started out as a gag manga, actually a lot like Dragon Ball, the same way. Okay, here's what one of the first things that shocked me. Reading what's usually called like chapter 0 of Kinnikuman, that original one-shot. Kinnikuman, if you've ever seen him, he's this very weird-looking character. He's got these big, round lips. Like, I think if it did not come from Japan, that would be like a really uncomfortable caricature. But he's got like these big lips and this weird flesh-colored fin on his head. And I never really got it. I just figured that's what he looked like because I think he was like an alien or something. I sort of knew about that. And then it turns out that the reason Kinnikuman has that fin on his head is because I always knew that Kinnikuman was like a wrestling thing. But it's because it starts out as an Ultraman parody. It's not wrestling at all. It's an Ultraman parody. The idea is that the original premise is that Kinnikuman is, which just means muscle man, is the forgotten 8th Ultraman brother. There's like 7 Ultraman brothers. And he's the forgotten 8th one, and the joke is that he sucks. That's why he has the fin on his head, because he's a take on the Ultraman designs. That's the whole joke, is that he sucks, and he's a terrible superhero, and he's bad at fighting kaiju, and everyone hates him and throws like tomatoes at him. They just fucking hate him for no reason. Once the series gets picked up, it becomes kind of, again, it's there's a really interesting tension. I'm not sure. You can really feel throughout the stories that the creator, who I believe is named oh my god, Kinnikuman creator, Takashi Shimada, Yoshinori Nakai and Takashi Shimada, which are, I didn't even know that it was a duo, who are a duo known as Yude Tamago. So you can feel the writers, I think it was probably both of them, to be honest. They really, really, really want to make a wrestling manga. But they're just kind of like doing this superhero parody for a while. until like 30 chapters in, when they just decide like, fuck it, let's just do wrestling, let's just commit to it. Because it's like, yeah, okay, he is a Ultraman parody where he's a superhero living in Japan, but the joke is that he lives in like a shed, like a metal shed in like an empty lot. And he eats garlic to grow to giant size so that he can fight the big kaiju monsters. And he's trying to prove that he's a good superhero, and hijinks ensue. He finds out that he's this little guy who is the member of Kinnikuman's own species, comes down and tells him that he's actually... It was where they sort of like retcon a little bit, like once the series gets picked up. They kind of start with that Kinnikuman's just a guy. His impression is that he's just a guy who exists. And then this little guy comes down, who's also a member of like the muscle people. And he's like, no, Kinnikuman, you're actually a prince from another world, from Muscle Planet. And you need to come save the planet from a pig man who has conquered it, and you gotta get your father's crown back. And Kinnikuman's like, all right, I guess. Like, oh, he only goes because the little guy who is known as Meat, he's Niku. The joke is that Kinnikuman means muscle. Niku means meat. So Kinnikuman has the kanji for like muscle, or for meat on his head, on his forehead. And Niku, the meat guy, the little meat boy, has the word Niku just written out in kana on his forehead, because that is writing a word out in kana is often considered a more childish style, a more childish way of writing. So that's the joke. He's like baby Kinnikuman, essentially, visually. They're really into like characters with stuff on their foreheads. That's like a big recurring character design motif. So like he goes to this alien planet because Meat offers him a gyudon bowl. He loves gyudon. He just loves meat. And he fights the pig guy in a wrestling match. And here's what I mean when I say that you can feel that they just want to make a different manga, because constantly throughout these early chapters, there are references to wrestling moves, to famous wrestlers, to more obscure wrestlers. They are clearly huge into pro wrestling, to the degree that like Kinnikuman does this move. It's like a special hold, and it is a parody of the signature hold of a real life wrestler, where the joke is that it's like an overly complicated, like needlessly awkward version of the hold for the holder to put on someone. And I'm reading it, and there's constant translators notes to be like, by the way, this is a reference to this guy. This is a reference to this thing. This is a reference to that. And it's all just wrestling history. There's almost no other references to pop culture. Just wrestling. So I'm not surprised that in a couple chapters, they're just going to swerve full on into pro wrestling. A lot of people will tell you to just kind of skip or skim those first 30 something chapters. But to be honest, I'm actually having a good time. It is very skimmable in a lot of chapters, but several of them are really fun. I'm actually surprised at how much fun these early storylines are. It's usually it's basically just a sitcom where each chapter is this very episodic story of something happening. The characters respond to it. Kinnikuman and Meat slowly meet these other characters. There's Terry Man, who is like a superhero from America, who's like kind of an asshole, and then he has a change of heart and becomes like friends with Kinnikuman. There is the character Mari, who is this preschool teacher who Meat he has a crush on in like a very cute childish way because he's like a little kid, and Kinnikuman has like, I guess I'd say, a more romantic adult crush on her, but of course she has no interest in Kinnikuman, at least in these early chapters. And but she has this like she shows up repeatedly. She's a very recurring character after her introduction, and she has this very like maternal, caring personality, which means that she's often like taking care of or looking after Meat and giving him attention instead of Kinnikuman in this very innocent way. But Kinnikuman's just like, fucking that little fucking shit fucking kid. And I it's cute and it's charming. I have a soft spot for I would say the manga's art style is not super, it's very of its time. You can kind of feel that the artist is a little bit in like the maybe early, less developed period where there's some good panels and stuff, but it's very much of its time, and it's taking after the influences of the day that were in Shonen Jump and manga in general, and gag comics where the characters have these very cartoony expressions and very simple. A lot of them have very simplified faces. Kinnikuman is a little more detailed, and like the main characters are a little more detailed, but lots of very googly-eyed background characters or like one-off bit characters. Not that much in the way of backgrounds. The action is extremely slapstick and kind of rubber hose in the way that characters move around. The expressions are super over the top and exaggerated and unrealistic to sell the comedy and stuff. But there's aspects of it that I like. I do find it kind of cute and charming. I really like Mari. She is I just think that kind of like 70s, early 80s style of like manga women are very cute. The way that she's drawn. Her personality is a very nice compliment to the series. I like that she's almost kind of oblivious to the two characters pining after her. And this thing was nagging at me where I was like, oh, people compare this series sometimes to Dragon Ball in its progression, where it started out as a gag manga and then it turned into a much more serious action drama thing. And I know that Kinnikuman, look, I've seen the roster of Muscle Grand Prix 2. I know that it is not entirely serious. I know that there's it keeps the goofy elements. But I know that Toriyama did this thing where he really struggled to keep a lot of characters relevant when he especially switched to Dragon Ball Z. And certain characters that a lot of people liked, like what is that little pig guy? I think Oolong. That girl Launch, who like changes personalities when she sneezes, who are like mainstay regular cast members in the original Dragon Ball manga, just stop showing up. They're just gone after a certain point, and only maybe referenced occasionally. And I was like, oh, is he going to do that with characters like Mari? So I just did a little looking up. I did a quick Google to just search her up on, Kinnikuman Mari, and I was immediately greeted with like, here's 20 alternate outfits that she has in the Kinnikuman gacha game from last year or something. And I said, oh, okay, cool. No. And apparently, from what I understand, not only did they not do the Toriyama thing, they kind of do the opposite of it, to where I cannot remember what characters, but I have just seen so much random information about Kinnikuman over the years of people saying, yeah, there's a character from like chapter 35. Like, that's the only time he appeared until like years later, and he gets brought back, and the thing that happened in chapter 35 is relevant and important, and like he remembers that, and it's like a callback, and it's important to the character. They actually just remember everything. They're like a Doug Walker, so you don't have to. The style of humor of early Kinnikuman is not exactly my thing all the time. Some things are quite funny. There's some very funny visual gags and moments of slapstick. There's a really funny scene where real life Japanese like legendary martial artist Mas Oyama, I brought him up in my Shinkiro video, is training because the story is about how Kinnikuman is going to prove that he can fight kaiju by beating the Loch Ness Monster, and Masoyama feels threatened for some reason and is like, I'm going to train to beat the Loch Ness Monster first. And there's this scene where he's training with his like associate, like his student, and his student is holding up a bottle, and he's going to like do a chop to like knock the cap of the bottle off clean and nothing else, right? And there's this huge buildup to him like doing this big like wind up karate chop, and he like spins around, and you get these like freeze like split second panels of like his eyes as there's like this motion whipping past, and he's like, this, the angle, the moment, the strike, and then he completely misses the bottle and just chops the guy's head off. But just the top level from like the eyes up. And it's actually a very funny visual gag. So occasionally it gets me with things like that. A lot of the jokes are this very like, I don't know what to call it. It's this kind of Japanese joke structure that doesn't really work for me a lot of the time, and I'm afraid that when I say it, you're going to probably notice it in a lot of anime. I guess, hang on, though, there's a good term for it. I'm going to call it smashing the frog. You know how this, there's that thing about explaining the joke is like dissecting a frog? Where you explain it and it doesn't become funny anymore. I noticed that there is this trend there's this very common structure of joke in a lot of Japanese media, at least in like manga and anime. I don't see it as much as games, come to think of it, but in those two mediums where the joke is that a character says they're going to do one thing and then does something else, and then another character goes, you're doing something else! And that's like the joke. And I've never really found it funny, and it shows up all the time in a lot of Japanese media. Like, in chapter 3 of Kinnikuman, Meat is telling him that he's got to go to Planet Muscle. And Kinnikuman is like, I got something really important that I have an important job I need to do first. And then the next panel is him standing, and he's like a sign flipper outside of he's like spinning a sign outside of like some restaurant or something. And Meat is shooting out from the side of the panel going, that's not important at all. And that's like the joke. And I've just never found that very funny. I guess Japanese people eat that shit up, but I don't find that kind of joke very funny. Just like sledgehammering the frog. I don't know why you need that other character to tell the audience what the joke is, but yes. That appears a lot. So it's a mix of that, but there's some good jokes. There's some funny stuff of like setups and subversions that don't like beat you over the head. There's a kaiju that only attacks beautiful women, and it attacks a beach, and this girl gets picked up, and her boyfriend's like, no! And her inner thought bubble is, well, she's actually like super pleased. She's like, wait, I'm being captured by a kaiju that only targets beautiful women. This is kind of awesome. This is so flattering to me. And it looks at her in its like giant hand, and she's just like splayed out, like and then it just whips her against a rock. Like there's some funny jokes. There's some funny jokes in the early manga. But I'm enjoying it. Like I wanna read more. That's Kinnikuman. I want to talk quickly about a couple games I was playing. One of them is called Peak. Have you played Peak? Yes, just like the slang term. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Is it peak or is it mid? It is actually like the developers are very aware of the joke, and it's very zeitgeisty. I don't know how well it's going to age, if it'll be intelligible at all. Although I will say that the game doesn't like rely on the joke being that it's called peak. It's just sort of like a silly little thing that I don't think would, in like 5 years when no one says that anymore, someone's going to look at that and not even register it, and it won't matter. They also refer to the game as friend slop, which I think is very funny. Friend slop is one of those terms. It's a term that's been... What's weird is, okay, it's like a plant. It's like an industry plant meme. That's how I feel about the term friend slop. Like, no one ever said that. No one ever used that term. What happened was, people started using the term slop to describe a lot of stuff, to the point that I think the term is kind of overused, and I really refrain from using it. Because it's, who said it? God, who wrote the thing about avoiding cliches? Because cliches make your writing weaker or your communication weaker. That's what slop falls into. Just tag it on to the the end of anything. This post is post slop. That coincided with this big surge, which has really been going on since like Among Us, of games that were made really for like co-op experiences or to be played by streamers, like very stream-friendly games, things like Lethal Company or Repo, mainly just excuses to get people together in voice chat and talk and play a game together, which I have no problem with. I think is like a perfectly, Danny Bunton's dream fulfilled. What's funny is she actually might well have approved. They are carrying on the legacy of Mule. And then someone just like, I think sarcastically referred to this little trend as friend slop. And then people said, are people really saying friend slop? And it's like, no, that one guy said it as a sort of like half-hearted joke on Twitter. But then it became like, it was so weird because it was like people, when you scroll down to a YouTube comment, like into a YouTube comment section, and all you can find are comments complaining about other types of comments expressing a certain sentiment, but you cannot find that sentiment, just comments complaining about it. That's what like friend slop is. It was this weird social thing, a little ironic given the subject matter, where someone said something, people said, are people really saying that now? To which other people said no, but the phrase, are people really saying friend slop now, is all you needed to hear to like start complaining about shit. People love complaining about shit. Anyway, I've barely talked about Peak. It's pretty neat. It is a game that it's like a mountain climbing simulator. The idea is that you and, well, ideally at least one other person, although I believe lobbies go up to like 20 people, are dropped at the bottom of like an island, and your goal is to climb up the mountain. It has proximity chat, and if you walk up if you walk up to a surface and like click and hold, your character will grab onto it and you can move up it. You cling to the wall. This is limited by your stamina meter. The stamina meter can be affected by a number of things. It drains as you run, jump, or climb things. Some things make it drain faster. Some things decrease your max stamina, like getting poisoned will Getting poisoned will decrease. It'll give you a debuff for a while that like slowly heals back up. You can take damage, for instance, from falling, which will decrease it until you get some kind of a healing item. There are items that you can find in the form of like fruit or certain survival equipment that you pick up. There's little things like ropes that you can throw to make climbing easier for everybody. If you can hold down the right click button, and if someone you'll like hold your hand out, and then as someone's climbing, you then become basically like a climbable object, and they will automatically like zip to you when they're close enough. So you can help your friends out. So you got that kind of the nice like someone gets to the top of the cliff first and then starts helping everybody back up. It's a very light casual game. You just kind of ascend up a mountain. There's a couple different levels. I believe there's a few like expeditions with different levels. That's like you start out on a regular one. It's like a jungle. Then you go to like the ice one that's got some different mechanics. It's got weather mechanics, and there's like you can get cold and you got to huddle up so that you can you get like a stamina debuff from being cold, but if you huddle up, you'll get warm again. There's like the magma level with the fire, and it goes on and on. And it's fun. It's a for what it does. I like that a lot of these games have been sort of like horror themed. Peak is just kind of an honestly fairly relaxing, straightforward game with some solid climbing mechanics and a few things that encourage cooperation. And I like it. It's just kind of a good time. It's also like $8 on Steam, so it's not hard to pick up. Next game that I want to talk about is something from my backlog. I'm not typically a believer in a gaming backlog, or like I gotta work through my backlog. I own lots of games on Steam and GOG, and if you bring in emulation, the world is my oyster. But I don't necessarily feel a pressure to to get through all of them. I don't see it as like a list of chores to be completed. I like having the game there, accessible to me in my library, because I think it might be interesting, and in the future, maybe I just have the hankering. So here's my thing, is I am a very internally motivated game player in what I choose to play. I have to be in the mood to play something first. I can't just like force myself to play something. I have to be kind of drawn towards it. And that leads to this situation where I want to play something, I want to play a game, but I just don't feel it's almost not even I guess it's a bit of choice paralysis, but part of it is also just like I just don't feel drawn to anything in particular. So maybe I need a little bit of a push, because I don't want the chore I don't want playing video games to feel like a fucking chore, dude. It's entertainment and art, and it should be cool and fulfilling and enriching. So how can I give myself a push to play something when I'm not feeling anything in particular at the moment without it feeling like a chore? And the answer was to basically spin a roulette wheel. So there's a website called What Should I Steam? You can put in your Steam account, and as long as your library is set to public, then it can basically get an index of your whole game collection, and then you can randomize. It has many features. There's a bunch of different categories that you can switch on or off to basically give you a game to play. You can click like NSFW content, yes or no. You can click on like, what's the other thing? Like, is it like DLC owned or something like that? The ones that I set it to were I own it, make it random, and out of something that I have not played, or that I have zero playtime in. that I've never even booted up before. And it spits me out a game. So I played a game called VirtuaVerse. This is a point-and-click adventure game in the style of the kind of classic style of like a Monkey Island. It's from 2020, released by a studio called Theta Division. This is their only game. This is the only game they have ever made and that anyone on the team has worked on. At least the ones in like the sound effects guy actually has some more credits. The localizers have a lot of credits, but other than that, it's like this is kind of their only game, and it's from 5 years ago. It has a really pleasant pixel art style in this really depicting this very gritty, grimy cyberpunk setting. It's a cyberpunk point and click adventure where everything's owned by corporations and many people live with a form of augmented reality. Almost everyone lives with augmented reality. And the main character, the way that it starts is that the main character, he wakes up, his girlfriend is gone, he doesn't know where she is, and his AR glasses are busted. So the first goal before you try to find her is to get your glasses repaired. And this is the first segment of the game. VirtuaVerse is not going to be for everyone. At least on its, I believe what it calls classic mode. There are two things that you can select at the beginning. Classic mode and I think story mode. Story mode is just... I'm assuming it's described as almost more of just like a narrative experience. I assume the puzzles are a lot easier, if there are any. Classic mode is what I picked because I was just more interested in the gameplay and how the puzzles played out and stuff like that. Yeah, classic is right because I don't want to say entirely moon logic where nothing makes sense, but at a certain point I did look up a walkthrough and go, damn, how was... Okay. Whoa, that kind of got me. I didn't really play this game after my first session, just because I sort of bounced off of the style. I was like, if this is the first section, and I had to look up a walkthrough for it because I hit a wall so hard. Maybe I'm stupid, but I'll pass. I'll pass for now. Maybe in the future I'll have a hankering for it. So what do I mean? I'll describe the first section, I guess, to give you some spoilers. So you go downtown, and there's like a shop. There's like an electronic shop out front on the street with a guy working the counter. There's a shady dude in the corner. By the corner of the street, there is the back entrance, or the it's like an alley only entrance to this. It's like a back alley electronic shop with a security guard outside. There's a bouncer outside, and then there's a restaurant. There's like a Japanese sushi restaurant with some people inside. And a homeless man out back who like rummages through garbage and is for food and is hooked on like cyber drugs, which are basically he just plugs in some crazy shit into his goggles and has a grand old time. And when you first encounter him, his goggles, he's like, fuck these things. They're not good enough or whatever. And he takes them, he throws them into the trash. You go to the dumpster and he's like, hands off my dumpster. So you're like, okay, I got to find a way to get these goggles out of the trash. So you head to the store out front and you talk to the guy behind the counter and you're like, hey, can you get me anything to fix my goggles? And the guy's like, nah, they're broken beyond repair. You're probably just gonna need a new one. So you're like, okay, how do I get the thing from the guy behind the dumpster? And he's like, I fucking love my cyber drugs. So you're like, okay, how do I get cyber drugs? You talk to the shady guy by the counter, and the shady guy by the counter is like, yeah, the dude at the store used to sell me epic cyber drugs, like some really good shit. This shit laced. But he does that was like under the counter, and I can't talk to him anymore because we had a falling out. So you go talk to the guy behind the counter, and he's like, no, I didn't do it. He denies it. So if you go over to the terminal, there's like a little cyber, I guess, network terminal at on one part of this street. There's a bunch of apps that you can use. One of which is a dating app. There's like a news app. There's like food delivery. There's I said news. There's like mail. But if you go to this dating app, there's like 12 rows of people. Sorry, there's more like, no, there is like 12 rows of people, or there's like 9 rows of people. No, 8. There's 8 rows of people. I'm remembering it more clearly now. And you can have conversations with several of them using your girlfriend's like ID, like digital ID card that you like she left behind that you've like kind of stolen, and you're using it to talk to people, to like catfish people, and you can have little conversations. But one of the guys, people on the dating app, is the dude behind the counter, and that's what he's on the dating app while he's at work, and you talk to him and he starts flirting with you, and you find out that he's cheating on his wife by being there. So you agree to like meet up with him later that day or that night or whatever. Make a screenshot, you print out a copy of the chat log, and you take it to him, and you threaten to blackmail him, and he's like, okay, fine, I'll give you the oh no, you need to, oh fuck, you don't get the drugs from the guy at the counter. You have to get them from the shady dude, but the shady dude will only give it to you if you get him something else, like these computer parts. So you need to get the computer parts from the guy at the counter, and you blackmail him with this picture of him cheating on his wife. But he says that he only takes cash. So you're like, okay, well, I have this stack of coins that I've been using to buy other stuff. And it's like, no, that's not good enough. That's not enough money. So you're like, well, can I go to the bank to withdraw funds? Because there's a banking app on the terminal, but for some reason it's not working. So what you need to do is that the bouncer in like the back alley won't let you into like the secret back alley technology shop. So you have to go to the food delivery app and order a pizza to the shop, and then the pizza comes in via drone delivery. Shout out War of the Worlds. And the bouncer guy is like, oh, I guess the boss ordered a pizza, and he goes inside and he lets you, and you go in after him. And then the boss didn't order a pizza, and then he gets mad and fires the guy, and then you're just still in there, and you're like, can I buy some stuff? And you buy some stuff, but they're like, I guess, necessary for later on in the game. And in the corner is a different network terminal that you can log into, and the banking app there works. So you withdraw funds for that. So you go there to get you get the money on your card to then go back to the guy at the counter, and you give the guy at the counter the money, and he's like, oh cool, here's your parts. So you go to the shady guy, you give him the parts, and he gives you the super cyber drugs. But you go back to the homeless guy, but you cannot put you can't give them to him. He refuses to hear you out, and you cannot put them in like the stack of cyber drugs that he's got beside him that he's been clicking into his thing. So what you need to do is you need to go to the restaurant, and you talk to the 2 guys at the restaurant. There's a really big guy who just loves eating, and there's a guy who's there for part of his food blog about how he hates spicy food, and he goes to places that don't serve spicy food. So what you need to do then is once you find out he doesn't like spicy food, you have to go to a vending machine that's outside, like a few screens away, and use your coins to buy. There's like 20 different drinks that you can buy from here, but one of them is a spicy sauce. It's called spicy juice. And you buy the spicy juice, and you go to the restaurant, and then you have to sit down, and you get like a closer view of all of the view switches to like the conveyor belt with leaving all the foods, or like as all the foods passing by. And you have to pay attention to you have to like back out and like actually look at what the guy is eating, because he only eats the dish. It's like an egg dish that's served on this blue plate, and you sit back down, and then you wait for the blue plate to come along, and you put the spicy juice on it, and then he drinks the spicy stuff. He eats spicy stuff, and he goes, it's really spicy. And then the owner of the restaurant just like, oh, I'm so sorry. And he grabs the guy's food and throws it out back in the trash. And then the homeless guy's like, whoa, food? And he starts rummaging around in the food. So then you go back to the middle alley, and he's distracted. So you put the super drugs on his stack, and then he eats his shit, and then he goes back to drugging out, to gooning out with his on jorkmate.com, and he puts the cyber drugs in. And he's like, whoa, and he gets so distracted by how fried he's getting that you get to access the dumpster and steal the glasses, and then you take them back to your apartment, and you repair them with some parts, and they work. That's the first segment of the game, and that took me, how long did that take me? 2.5 hours. It's like 5 screens. And I got really hung up on the having to order the food. Having to order the food was like, I did not expect that I would have to like click on the food app and then click on one of the pizzas and then that are on offer. And then I would get the ability to put in the address of the back alley store. That was like the one linchpin of the whole thing that just totally missed me, because I was like, oh, I guess I just missed it. And I spent just so long wandering around trying different stuff. I figured out that you can put the spicy stuff on the guy's food, and like all that worked out, but just I missed this one thing in this like absolute maze of different options you have on this this terminal. And it was like Moon logic, not exactly. But if that's anything with like what the rest of the game is, well, it's certainly like a classic adventure game. Would I recommend it? If that sounds enjoyable to you, like you like that kind of stuff, sure. If you are not familiar with the genre, or that sounds kind of aggravating to you, probably not. But not a terrible game. Cool visuals, cool music. Yeah, VirtuaVerse. It's alright. And finally, Divinity Original Sin. Divinity, a series that I know very little about. I know that it was what Larian did before Baldur's Gate 3, Bug 3. But I knew very little about it. I didn't know that it was like, there's like Divine Divinity and Divinity 2, and then Divinity Original Sin, which is a prequel to Divine Divinity, and then Divinity Original Sin 2, which is a sequel to Divinity 2 for some reason. There's a whole weird timeline with these games, but it probably doesn't really matter that much. A lot of CRPGs tend to stand relatively on their own, because they're often just modeled after like, you know, tabletop RPG campaigns. So there's not a lot. They hinge on you creating a new character and sort of being new to the world. I'm only a couple hours in, and it's cool. You can definitely see. I was actually talking to a friend of mine who has watched her boyfriend play Baldur's Gate 3. I have not played Baldur's Gate 3. I own it, and I guess with this I'm kind of building up to it. But I was describing some of the gameplay stuff and some of the conversation and role-playing elements, and apparently there is a pretty clear through line from that to the Baldur's Gate. This game places a really cool emphasis on role-playing in a way that, personally, I haven't seen before. So at the beginning, all right, this is also a little funny. So at the beginning of the game, you start off by making 2 characters. Not just one, and not like a full party, but just 2 characters specifically. And the idea that you are source hunters. Which are sort of like witch hunters. There's this magical power called the Source, and it's dangerous, and there's this whole society formed to go hunt after them. They're sort of like an inquisition. So you're 2 source hunters. You get to choose your class and all that. And at the beginning of the game, you've been sent to investigate this one town that has supposedly, suspicions of some kind of sorcery, nonsense going on. One of the first things that happens is you stumble across a guy who fell off a cliff and died. And you find a note in his pocket where he's writing about how he was finally going to fly. He was trying to fly. And then the characters get into a little conversation about it. And you can choose how each of them reacts to that. You can say, what an idiot, what a naive fool. Or you could go with a more forgiving, a more forgiving response, like, oh, but with all of the wild unknown things in this world, who could say that flight is impossible? What was impossible yesterday is normal today, or whatever. And if you choose that first option, you'll get a little bump to that character's, you'll get a little +1 to that character's pragmatism. And if you choose the other one, you'll get a +1 to their romanticism. And there's actually a number of personality-based stats of different spectrums that you align on. Are you more of a romantic thinker or a more pragmatic thinker? Are you more aggressive, or are you more charming or more intimidating when you want to get your way? And at several points throughout the story, and in side quests as well, the characters will just stop. The 2 main characters, there are other characters who can join your party, but the 2 leads are kind of they're the leaders of the party. They're joint leads, and they will have discussions about what they should do next. You often come to crossroads about what should happen, what you should do, and you then role play a conversation between them about it, and maybe both of them are in agreement, but they might not be. Sometimes you can have it be so that they take very different approaches to situations, and one of them thinks something stupid and we shouldn't do that, and the other one thinks, oh, but we should do this because of this or that, because of I'm making an ethical argument, or I think that this would be beneficial for us. There are different angles that they can come at it from. And at a certain point, if they disagree enough times in a row on this subject, and they have enough of a back and forth, you will transition into, okay. So I should say before this that I thought it would be fun because the 2 characters there's a man and a woman are the default. I thought it'd be fun to make them Katrina and myself. That would be cute. When I play Wizardry, I usually also make us in the party. I have a character named Tygan and a character named Katrina. And then I make up a bunch of stupid names for other characters like Blimpus or something. So I thought it would be fun to make the 2 of us and kind of make them look a little bit like us, as close as I could sort of get in the character creator. And what I was not expecting was that within 20 minutes of this game, I would be role-playing an argument with my girlfriend. That was not really what I was expecting to happen. And I certainly was not expecting it to play out in the form of a rock, paper, scissors match. So when you get into the argument mini game when it's gone on long enough and a decision has to be made, you go into a rock. Takes the form of literally a series of rock, paper, scissors exchanges, where based on whatever that character's, I believe, strongest like social stat is, because again, there are a couple different social stats that are based kind of like actually Vampire, now that I think of it, which is something I really liked about that game. Whichever one is higher, whichever one's the highest, that's kind of like the dominant stat. So if you've got like 4 charm, every time you win the rock, paper, scissors exchange, you get like 4 of these orbs filled up. There's like a bar that fills up, and I think there's like 10 or 15 orbs that constitute it. And every time you win, you get certain amount. And the stronger your personality is in that certain aspect, the more reward you get out of winning an exchange, which is kind of a neat. It sounds really silly on paper that you are hashing out a disagreement between 2 people, much less in my case, it's like my girlfriend and I, in the form of a rock, paper, scissors match. But that you are. But it's actually like pretty good. It's kind of when I think about it, it's actually kind of a cool role-playing idea to capture without having to write intricate dialogue for every single argument that you could have about everything possible in the game, to sort of like encapsulate the back and forth of an argument and who gets more of the upper hand based on one thing or the other. She won that argument. So I said, okay, fine. No, fine. We'll do what you want to do. Yeah. So for all of the relationship counselors who might be listening in, because I know that I have a big listenership in the relationship counselor demographic. The next time the couple comes in and they just cannot come to an agreement on something, maybe try implementing the rock, paper, scissors method. Just play a little John Ken Poe, if you know what I mean. I think it'll work out really well. Yeah, so I find that stuff pretty neat. The game has a lot of environmental stuff in its combat, where you can like put oil down on the ground and then throw a fire spell and everything will ignite. There's like different debuffs that I haven't quite seen the full range of yet. I got an extra party member who's like an archer. So at this point I have like one of my characters is like a shadow blade or something, which I picked because it was like the assassin-y stealth magic class, and a wizard, and then this archer. So haven't done too much combat outside of the introductory area, but there's a nice long, I actually really enjoyed the town that you go to. You can do like this dungeon. There's like some fighting. There's an optional dungeon that I did, and then there's some more fighting before you get to the actual town. And, you know, I found it in a lot of RPGs that I've played, at least Western ones, the best parts of the game, or the parts that I just want to get to, are where I am. The town stuff is all the interim. It's all it's a little bit, I don't want to say filler-y, but it feels kind of like, yeah, I'm just walking through here, but really like I want to be dungeoneering and going out and fighting stuff, and that's what I like. I find that in a lot of games, a lot of RPGs that I've played. And you know, Divinity's done something pretty impressive, which is that walking around through the town is actually quite interesting. There is a ton of care put into the detail of the world and making it feel bustling and lively, and not just like a bunch of NPCs that have been placed into their spot and they do something. There is always dialogue, dialogue barks going off nearby or around the corner. You hear a merchant talking about something. You hear a conversation going on elsewhere. There's a bunch of stuff happening across the town, from the market to the kind of like big open like park area where there's all these performers. You talk to people. Everything is fully voiced. I should mention that I'm playing the enhanced edition, which has, to my understanding, more voice acting. Excuse me. More voice acting. I don't know if the original had none, but it's got not everything is voiced, but a lot of voice acting. I think it's graphically improved a little bit and rebalanced and stuff like that. Generally the preferred version of the game. So lots of voices, and it makes a very good use out of them. I like the fact that you don't have a really I would maybe like hard objective tracker. You get lots of side quests, and there's stuff on the main quest, and stuff will be marked on your map. Even if you haven't been somewhere, you don't have an immediate map of the area. It's like, faded out, and you've got to go walk over there to fill in that part of the map. But you will have an objective marker at a certain point to tell you, go over, in this area. So you can always go by that, but there isn't like, here's what you need to do that you pull up. You have a journal, and the journal records every objective that you've had, but it doesn't like tell you, do this now. It just says, this guy said this, and you can follow up on that thread. Like the first time, this is like, here's some cool stuff. Like the first time that I got into the town, you get in there around the you enter and you have to walk. You're on the lower level around the sea, like ground sea level, let's say, because it's in. They've got a whole harbor that they're connected to, or that's there, and most of the town is built up on the hill, much on the higher elevation. So you come in on the sea level, and you have to walk at least past the harbor. But I decided to, check out the piers and stuff. And there's a boat that's on fire. You hear these shouts of people trying to save their boat, and they don't know what to do. And I had a scroll for a rain spell that I had picked up in the optional dungeon, and I casted that over the boat, and it put the fire out, and everyone thanked me and then dispersed. And you can go walk around and see the sailors who are now walking around, and now the boat's been saved. And you can talk to some guys who have a grounded ship. Their ship's been like wrecked in the harbor. I forget exactly why, but it's like falling apart. And they're like, yeah, our ship's fucked. We don't know what to do. We need new work. So you like keep that in the back of your mind, and it just says, there's some sailors who said that they need new work, or they're out of work. And then when you go talk to people, a lot of NPCs, you can ask, hey, do you have any work? And a lot of them will be like, sorry, I can't really hire anyone on. Taking on like 3 or 4 sailors is like 3 or 4 people is too much for me. You get that a lot. But there's this guy who is like he's forming his own like for-profit adventurers guild called the Fabulous Five. There's more than 5 of you, I assume. I assume he wants more than 5 people. And he sells it to you, and I was like, sure, what the hell? That sounds fun, like a fun storyline. Of course, we had an argument about it. I won that one. But you're like, hey, there's these sailors who need work, and he's like, oh yeah, I'll take it. And he is clearly such a showman, like snake oil salesman, carpetbagger type character. But I'm like, yeah, I'm engaging with it because I think it seems like a fun storyline. Yeah, so far I'm at the point, I don't know how much I want to spoil, But fairly early into the game, it gives you a taste where it's like, you're kind of like going along, there's like a murder in the town. Is the murder related to the rumored sorcerer? This and that. And you're walking around investigating stuff, and you walk into like a random house, and you're like, oh, let me talk to that character. And it puts you into a, who isn't even like, I don't even think you're directed to go talk to them. But you go do that, and you get put into like an honestly kind of interesting ethical conundrum. After which you are immediately whisked via freak magical teleportation into a 5-minute sequence that's just like, hey, by the way, this is a story where like you're gonna save the whole universe at the end or something. So check it out, Don't worry. We're going to scale up. It's small scale now, but it's going somewhere. And then it just drops you back in, and you're like, okay, cool. It's a little bit super ham-fisted and just like smacking you upside the head. I almost get the impression that it's for people who don't typically play these games and might not be in them for the long haul. Because it is really like, don't worry. It's going to get cool. It's going to get epic. All right, fine. So I'm a little bit past that point. I've spent a lot of time I play games very slowly. That's what I've realized, something I've realized about myself. I really take my time. I explore stuff. I go in houses. I talk to people. I experiment with stuff. I check out the menus in the UI, and I soak in some of the ambience, and I play stuff kind of slowly. So even though I'm a couple hours in, I'm only really at the first real plot line of the game still. I'm not sure exactly how long it is, but I got like another party member, so there's like 4 of us. Okay, one thing that mildly annoys me is gold management. So this is like, okay, I'm sure it's like a tabletop thing, but dear God, can video games, if I'm just a single person playing a game and I know there's multiplayer, I really just, can we just have like a shared party gold, like bank? This is the big thing that like one of the biggest things that Wizardry 8 improved upon, which is not giving every single character, like all 6 characters in your party, their own gold stash that you have to manage and trade between them when you want to buy stuff. Divinity does that, and I just ended up like it's very easily overcome because it's an actual item in your inventory. So I just gave it to one of my characters and just said, you're gonna hold the gold. That's your job. One of your jobs. You're gonna hold the gold. And then everything I just buy through them. Because there's also, like, you can trade and barter with everybody. There's a lot of cool role-playing aspects. You can just trade with literally anybody you want to talk to. Not everyone has something to trade, but you can do it. And you can make offers. You can engrave the every merchant, every NPC has like a level of affection for you. They like you a certain amount, and you have a rating with them. And the higher your rating, the better you can barter with them. So you can like lowball them on deals. And if they like you enough, they'll just let you have it, which is fun. Lots of neat little systems, neat little combat stuff, neat little role-playing stuff, lots of detail around the world. There's always something going on. I think it looks quite nice, personally. And it's just a very solid one of these. So far, it is just a very solid one of these games. These, like, overhead CRPGs that are clearly Dungeons and Dragons inspired. And I'm enjoying it. It's a cool game. I haven't had all the time in the world to sink into it, but it's been pretty cool. Divinity Original Sin. Enhanced Edition. And that's gonna be about it. My voice is very tired. I have been speaking with force for a while. And And I am ready to be done. I'm ready to call it to a close. If you've been listening this far, thank you for listening to me ramble. Check out, I am currently working on the main channel video. It should definitely be out by next week. As in Monday, week of Monday. It'll be out within a week. I'm pretty excited for it. It's actually on a game people have heard of this time. You know, I've actually been doing more games people have heard of recently. But anyway. Check out my Patreon. What else? Nothing really. If you've got a question, leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. I'll definitely get to it next time. Yeah. The Cellarcast. Bye.